Soften all the way through to your chair. Just as a reminder, for those of you who might be new, weight resting just in front of the sitting bones. Folding from the hip, you want to avoid trying to round yourself out or arch your back. Instead, you are sitting comfortably here. Folding forward, resting. Shoulders are soft, your back, you'll notice my back was basically straight. The more you soften your lower back, it goes from being arched all the time or collapsed to, or some version there, mixture of, to basically straight, from the outside straight. If I line myself up with a shoji, you can see that it's straight. And so you want to soften so that the weight falls through to this point. And again, you don't want to force your back to be straight. It's just your back, as it opens, tends to become more flat, depending on your body type. Everyone's body type is different. As you soften the throat, sides of the neck, the back of your neck, allow the crown of your head to float upward. The tops of your shoulders releasing and hanging down. Feel your elbows hanging as though they grow heavy. You can also practice by placing your arms by your sides, so your shoulders are falling to the side of your body rather than being pulled back or collapsing forward. So that if you were standing, the tip of the middle finger would fall into the side seam of your body. And then you simply bend your arms, but you still continue to feel your elbows sinking down, softening the tops of your shoulders. Easing your chest, softening your belly. If you find yourself trying to breathe, that is pulling in your breath and pushing out your breath, see if you can release that process. Be fully aware of your breath, but just leave it alone. And instead, very gently allow your intention to notice the places that are restricting the breath or gripping the breath, and release that tension. The easier, the better. With each exhalation, continuing to soften further. Release your glutes, your hips, your thighs, so that your legs are simply free. You're simply resting in this position, softening upward as you release your neck and your spine lengthens, letting your body sink downward through the body to the chair. And your legs are released, light and easy, simply resting on the ground. Exhaling, softening. Inhaling, noticing a deepening of the stillness. Just a few more breaths. Becoming as quiet and as soft as you're able to. And if you feel like this is continuing to be effective, then simply continue with the practice. Getting deeper and softer, more and more quiet inside. And then when you're ready, your hands nice and soft. Warm. Only ever touch your body with warm hands. And then using that warmth to open the crown of the head. Continuing to release the neck, release the shoulders. General reminder for the people who are learning Qigong and Taiji, that as your elbows come up, your shoulders go down. Your shoulder blades sink down the back, so this entire joint pivots evenly so that you will not compress your neck. Softening the back of the head, let your thumb trace a path along the base of the skull. Softening the whole neck, the sides, the back of the neck, the spine. Again, emphasizing that space at the base of the neck. The great hammer point. And especially if you've been out in the sun or the wind, make certain that all of this is soft and released. Depending where you live, we're still right at that time where it's just warm enough that everyone starts taking off their clothes and going outside, but it's still much colder than the body can sometimes handle. So we end up actually more exposed sometimes at this time of year than we do in the middle of the winter when everyone's bundled up. So if you need to, take extra time to warm those spots that were exposed to the chilly weather until they have that sense of warmth glowing from the inside. And if I may as well, of course, as usual, welcome the people who are new to the class. I already had one person come who doesn't seem to know what's going on here. But if you find yourself new to the class, please do check down below for a video that will teach you the form. It's an introduction to this particular style of Qigong practice, as well as a list of the names of the forms and movements. In every class, we get dozens. In one class, nearly 100 people. But on average, they only stayed, I think, 10 minutes or something. I think because people come and check it out, but don't quite know what's going on. And they join in the middle. So that's why I try to let people know that there's a place to look to figure out what's happening. Or maybe they're just scared away by my funny socks. Allowing your awareness to settle and sink deep. Deep below the Notice that there's a speed as you circle that can go too fast. You can go so fast that you're just pushing into your skin instead of moving with the skin. Especially if you have very tight skin or very puffy skin. Really pay attention and listen Are you pushing into your skin or moving with it? In both directions, and of course, one direction will feel differently than the other. You can also go too slowly to be helpful. So find that sweet spot in the amount of speed you use, the amount of pressure you use. It actually aids circulation and helps your awareness sink into your body, connecting with the tissues, this fascial layer. And by the way, one of the more common ways that people get those dark to their eyes, if they're tired, people tend to grind their hands into it. It actually causes bruising. Very often, all of that dark circle that people experience, it's half of the time it's just bruising and fluid accumulation from pushing into their eyes too hard. So if you're finding that this practice is giving you those dark circles, then you're actually causing bleeding inside by pushing too hard. So please be gentle. I've seen that happen once. Like, why are you punching yourself in the face with Qigong? It's not part of the practice. Be gentle. Soften that space between the eyebrows, especially at the ends of the eyebrows. This place where there's so much accumulation and tension. Opening those lines of tension. Spreading the eyebrows, that space between the eyebrows. It's been shown that if you make faces, even by pretending, that your brain will start to manufacture the chemicals of whatever that facial expression is. So an actor who makes an angry face starts to feel angry. A person who makes a happy face starts to feel happy. It's very interesting. And so similarly, if you ease these areas, like a person who gets Botox and it releases the areas of tension because it forces them to be numb, and it releases those areas of tension, they've actually shown that it has a positive mental emotional benefit because you're releasing these habit patterns that are part of the experience of being tense and unhappy. And so you're giving yourself a cue that, oh, maybe I'm actually more relaxed. And so you start to feel more relaxed. Similarly, as we do these movements, as you spread open your face, how does that make you feel emotionally? How does it make the rest of your body feel? Pay attention. We're busily undoing decades of emotional constraint habits. And you might notice a change even while you're doing it. And we tend to look outside in a way to see how we feel. That's one very important reason for feng shui, that keeping your house clean and free of clutter, because in one way, the outside, the space that we live in, is a mirror of our inside. But it's also the other way around. We tend to shape ourselves based on where we are, which is why it's very important to be in places that are healthy for us. And so if you find yourself in a chaotic living condition, an unclean, unhealthy living condition, do what you can to change it, either by moving if you have to, or doing what you can to make the space reflect how you would want to be. So the homework for today, clean your room. Remember to continually soften your hands. If you're getting good at softening your hands while you practice, emphasize softening the forearms. That gentle quality, this easy quality, warmth, can slowly start to spread up the body. And so if by the end of this 100 days of practice, if just your hands are much softer, that makes a tremendous impact in how well your whole body changes. So continually keep this as part of the practice. Continually drawing awareness back to the palms, softening, letting go, and then allowing that softness and ease to soak into the body. This is just another way of talking about qi flow. The awareness settling into the space beneath the skin. As you become more aware of this area in your body, within your face, are you able to notice if there's one area in particular that feels like it doesn't absorb the warmth, or you're not able to put your mind into those locations? And if that's true, once you become aware enough to notice, then when you're making these circles, allow the softness and warmth from one spot to spread into that area that's otherwise relatively blocked or deficient of mind, deficient of circulation. It's all the same. And as you create that movement, that a wave of softness and warmth from one area to the other, not only does it move a relative excess from one spot, but it helps to heal the emptiness in the spot next to it, and that heals everything. But we can only do that if our ability to listen and to feel and to become quiet is strong enough, to become still inside enough to notice what's happening. Eventually it gets easy, like feeling if your left hand is colder than your right. For those of you who took the classes where we taught the channels that sink down the torso, you can allow your awareness to help them move downward as you do this movement, helping everything sink down. Soft hands, soft belly. Even your mind becomes gentle, like a quiet breeze, and it sinks into the body. Always taking extra time at this moment to sink. Since we spent a bunch of time on the head, no excess up there. If your mind is spinning, continually draw your awareness down until it begins to calm a bit, until your breath slows a bit. If you're feeling especially agitated, it's okay to get up and go for a quick walk, move around, and then come back to practice. Every day will be different. Welcome, Del. I'm glad that you made it. Looks like lots of people joining us today. Softening the front of the shoulder. Using your fingertips, your knuckles, your palm. Today the palm feels especially good for me. Let's see what works best for you. Warmth soaking in, not trying to push into the muscle, instead allowing the pressure to sink just beneath the skin, nourishing that space between the muscle and the skin, and a little bit between the various tissues. Letting go and letting go. And for those people that are new here, that aren't going to follow the introduction link down below, you can always feel free to ask questions during class. I'll do my best to respond, either at the beginning or at the end. But you take your time. Find some comfort with this practice. Softening these points here on the top of the forearm, large intestine 11, 10, 9. Pericardium 6, Sanjiao 5. Large intestine 4, small intestine 3. I know that some of you are busily learning the basics of Chinese medicine, the points, the channels. which I highly encourage if you're going to follow this path of Qigong. Just having a basic knowledge of the anatomy of the body, as well as the energetic, the Qi flow anatomy of the body, and just a rudimentary understanding of the terms. Because often they get translated into English using words that mean other things, and it all gets very confusing. So if you have some base level of knowledge, just read a basic fundamentals book someplace, and it can be very, very helpful. Otherwise, it's easy to get confused with the mixed terms. These points up here, gallbladder 21, and there's a Sanjiao point back there, and a large intestine point over here, and you want to be able to warm and soften this whole area, wherever you're gripping. Gentle and easy. Lung 5. Remember that this is a kind of somatic, body-based meditation, that we're using touch as a point of reference for our awareness. So when your mind wanders away, soften around the distraction. Don't reject it. Just lose interest. It'll get fuzzy and fade away. And then your awareness will naturally come back to what's happening. And the better you can get at continually coming back and coming back and coming back, you start to wear a groove in the brain. It's a physical shape that occurs in the brain. The brain changes shape based on your meditation. And by training it to always come back to what's happening, come back to what's real, away from illusion to what's happening. It is tremendously impactful for the health of the body and the mind. Generating circulation all the way to the fingertips. If you have one problematic fingertip, then spend extra time there. For me, it's this one that I cut off. Always needs a little bit of extra help. Releasing the solar plexus, following the warmth of your palms into your body, using that as a way to use your heat from your palms as a way to guide your awareness deeper into the body. Carrying in this very quiet intent of kindness and friendliness, gentleness, warmth, letting things ease open and smooth out. Softening that space between the solar plexus and the navel. Both directions. You can use both hands, one hand. I'm using the palm. Connect however you like. But with both of these places, the solar plexus in the middle of the abdomen, as you let it go, maybe you notice that the breath flows more easily into this area. The emotions are a little bit softer. Soft and open. Remember that as your elbows lift, your shoulders sink. Don't let them pull up toward your ears. Softening down the sides toward the navel. Softening down toward the navel. It's such a nice feeling to let your awareness just soak in and get quiet. The more you wake up your dantian, the more alive and warm it becomes. It starts to become a very pleasant, quiet, comfortable space to rest your awareness. I've had the experience of in class, if I'm not careful, I'll kind of dive in deep, and then I'm aware that, oh my gosh, I've been sitting here or standing here with my awareness there for like 10 or 15 minutes. I have no idea. These very awkward students shuffling their feet around. So the more you can allow yourself to feel into that space, the more pleasant it becomes and the more nourishing. One of the reasons it's very worthwhile to develop a clear and comfortable seated posture, either in a chair or on the ground. If you can sit in such a way that the more you soften, the more you are held up, which is what I often try to describe in these classes, this first level of internal cultivation. The more I soften through my body, the clearer there is this sense of upright fullness that supports me. So I could fall asleep like this and just be supported. And if I can create that stability where everything is comfortable and open, the breath is easy, the mind is resting comfortably in the body, then anytime that it's actually appropriate to happen when you're doing a comfortable Ganxian meditation, you can dive deep and you can stay there until it's time to come out. Not that it's always good to do that, but there are times that it's good to do that, and your energy will do it automatically for you if you clear the space and you're able to sit there so that you're not distracted by pain. Instead, your awareness goes and rests in this deep, quiet space, nurturing and nurturing. It's fantastic for your physical health as well as your mental. And then after some period of time, it comes back out on its own. And you'll feel refreshed and deeply nourished. And usually your practice is stepped up another level. You can't force it to happen. You shouldn't try. But it is a thing that can happen. But you have to have the requirements, the circumstances for it. You have to be in a place that no one's going to walk over to you and shake you. Say, hey, get up. Don't sit there. You're sitting in front of my store. Or sitting this way, if I sit like this, after 20 minutes or something, it's going to become very painful and obstructive to your breath, and you won't be able to relax. Same if I sit like this or anything else. So developing this capacity to rest comfortably in your own body is huge. And I was talking about before, you create a space around which it doesn't draw your awareness out through clutter. It doesn't make you feel contracted inside, chaotic. It's just quiet, relatively open. Do as best you can. Young parents especially might have a difficult time finding these spaces. And then as you settle into these quiet awarenesses, you might find yourself drawn in deep. And you want to have the circumstances available so that you can just allow that to happen. Because it won't happen when you want it to happen. It happens when it's appropriate. If you try to force it, then actually you're creating tension. And so you make a space for it, and sometimes you'll sink deep, sometimes it's not the time for that, and other things happen. But learning to be comfortable in your body and stable and easy so that your chi can sink can be really transformative, and it's worth developing. It's a very simple method. It's not a huge amount of complexity to this. It's simply that people rarely take the time to cultivate a quiet body, a quiet mind, and a stable enough space within which to try to practice. You have to set aside time to see what happens. And it can be transformative. I highly recommend it. Letting your awareness soak into the tissues. Warming and spreading open the lower back. Healing that contracted, compressed area that tends to collapse. point just above the knee on the outside. Stomach 34. This can be a very useful point for breast health, if that's a concern to you. Just a reminder, as we reach for these points down lower in the body, depending on how your body is currently shaped and how soft or tight it is, you may find it difficult to reach down below. So please do find a more comfortable position so that you're not collapsing or obstructing or tightening. We just spent all of this time softening our lower back. And so in a way, it becomes momentarily more fragile, susceptible, because it's releasing its tendency to contract and protect itself. And so you want to be extra gentle. Don't force it open. Don't be like, oh, I can now stretch further. Instead, be extra cautious, extra kind. So if you hinge from the hip, continue to soften your lower back as best you can, to soften your neck by lengthening upward. And this movement that travels up, even at an angle, can continue to support you as long as you let go in the right way. Stomach 36. Leg 3 miles. Or I guess for you more sane metric people, leg 3 kilometers. Spleen 9. Gallbladder 34 on the side between these two bones. One that comes up from this way, one that comes up this way. You make a little triangle pointing downward toward your shin. And you find the point at the part of the triangle pointing toward your shin. Remember, if you tend to have knee discomfort, you might want to spend even longer on these circles and points around the knee. A lot of people find them very, very helpful. Continuing to soften your hands, releasing the calf, the Achilles, the whole area up in here. If it's gripping, find the direction that it tends to grip and help to combat that direction by softening and helping it release in the other direction. Center of the calf, bladder 57. Remember, we want to touch every part of our body, all of our areas on our leg and our shin and the space around, and find those spots that are neglected and cold, numb, and start to wake them up. This liver 3-point here is super useful, right in the middle of this avocado in my sock here, between the two tendons, the bones. Easier and easier. Get your feet soft and squishy, or as best you can. Remember to keep them warm. That will help. Cold causes contraction. Nice and comfortable. Flexing from your hips. Let your back be soft. Being gentle. How can you release all of this and let your legs lengthen as you go down? Is there a way for as you extend down, you'll see my feet. My heel slides forward as I come down because all of this is getting longer, not getting shorter. I'm not pulling in. A little bit longer each time. Your spine as well. Every time you go down, don't shorten. Lengthen. Get a little bit longer through your neck. A little bit taller as you sit each time. Your shoulder blades sink down the back and stay softened in an appropriate location. You don't need to pull them up and reach. All of this stays nice and long and easy as best you can, even if the movement is very small. Lengthening your arms, your spine, your legs. Lengthen your spine even more, growing taller and then falling around the circle. No contracting, only lengthening. No feeling of a stretch. You're not trying to pull against yourself. Just be easy. Stay in the realm of comfort. Feels good. Softening your waist. You're turning your navel. You're not twisting your shoulders into your chest. I can turn my chest so that my navel doesn't move. Maybe turn my head so I feel like I'm moving a lot. But you want your nose, your sternum, and your navel to stay together. My hips are staying in one place. And you soften the waist, the lower back. You can turn your upper spine and your neck even a little bit. You just want to make sure that, in the very least, you're also turning your waist. Eventually, in Qigong and Tai Chi practice, these other methods, this area becomes very mobile, but only if you soften. If you tighten it up, then it freezes, like everything tight. letting your awareness soak into that space between the navel and the spine, the middle dantian. And if you'd like to lie down, whenever you're ready, feel free to do so. Again, make certain that if you need to place something beneath your knees or under your back, under your feet, your head, your elbows, find some way to be comfortable so that you're lying easily on the ground as best you can. Or in your bed or on your couch. But do find a way to let go of your whole body. Just being here. Just being present with your awareness spreading out through your body, especially through this layer that we've been cultivating. Take your time. Feel free to stay in this comfortable position for as long as you'd like, allowing your body-mind to settle. And then when you feel ready, if you'd like to, sit up. Again, be careful because your body is probably softer and more open than you might be used to. Sometimes it's easy for people after letting go to strain something or feel something pop in a way they didn't expect because every joint is now more spacious. So we want to move a bit like elderly people who are being careful not to hurt anything. Better to be careful. And then once you're comfortable, allow your awareness to sink into that space in the middle dantian. Within this system that we're practicing, there are 5 dantians. This one's right in the center. And then your awareness spreads out through your body from that space. And then slowly expands out into the space around you, keeping some quality of your awareness in the center, grounded and anchored. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, feel free to ask. I've got a little bit of time. Thanks, Chris. I'm glad that you came. Yeah, your questions are always great. I'm happy to answer them as best I can, or I can just send you an audio later. Sometimes it's easier just to find a video teaching, here's where this point is, and they show the bones and they show the local point and all that kind of stuff. It's just easier often in those little videos where they have close-ups. But yeah, TCM is worth exploring, and I'm glad you're doing it. Sure. That makes sense, Del. There's a place between enthusiasm and seriousness, or happy and sad, these things, that exists in a way before all of that stuff, or we can say in between, but it's not quite true that it's a balance point. It's more like it's a separate space. That's the pre-heaven space that we talk about sometimes, where there's this quality of the awareness that is there, the quality of perception that exists purely outside of these qualities of the mind that cause problems. It has its own kind of quality. And one of them, for instance, is this quality of clarity, gentleness, what we can call patience. But it's not really patient because it's simply there. We can call it honest, but it's not honest in the sense of, it's learned how to not lie. It's honest because it's clear and it expresses itself in that space of clarity. It takes the world seriously in the way that it's not being distracted by other things. It's not deciding that something isn't worth its time. This is more important, this is less important, that kind of quality. Instead, it's just present, doing whatever it's doing. So if I clean the table, I'm fully present as though it's the most important thing in the world, because it is, because it's what I'm doing. The most important thing is what you're doing. And so that quality of learning how to be serious, but not serious because you're gripping or because you're worried. That kind of seriousness isn't healthy any more than being distracted and treating something like it's worthless, because there is nothing that is worthless, because everything is our lives. And if it's here, then we're doing it. And we want to do it as wholeheartedly as we can, with as much of a beginner's mind as we can, where we haven't prejudged the experience. We simply allow it to be there. Because for somebody, cleaning the table is going to be their moment of deep awakening and meditation. Because why not? Because it's life. And we can learn how to be here and awake and clear doing anything. There's a whole style of meditation and healing and internal cultivation based around drinking tea. It's about learning how to find the universal in the specific. Yeah, the wind heat question, Chris, is interesting. Basically, it's this idea that the external environment affects us. And there's this perfectly balanced environment that is perfect for humans. It's not too wet, it's not too dry, it's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's not too windy, it's not too stagnant. There's some perfect pivot point, which of course, we rarely get to experience, but theoretically it exists, where we could just be outside naked and perfectly comfortable, something like that. And And then from that point, we say, okay, there's some play where, things change, but people are basically healthy, especially if they wear the right clothing. But there's some point when it's too windy and too hot. And now the impact of that, if that finds its way into my body, that starts to show up as wind heat. And similarly, if it's super windy and cold, most people have had that experience. They go outside and just something about the wind and the cold gets to them, and they feel really uncomfortable when they come inside, and it's penetrated into their body. They get the sniffles, their ears are clogged. It's uncomfortable. The environment affects us. If it's heat or if it's cold, if it's damp from the outside, people who live in a swamp are constantly impacted by that excess damp. I've lived in deserts for a long time, and I've seen how the dryness really gets to people. This excess of a kind of yang, heat, dry quality, it's really intense for people. It affects everything about them. And recognizing that those environmental factors affect people is part of Chinese medicine. And so we use these terms like wind heat or wind cold or damp or these kinds of things, pathogenic dryness, to recognize what's going on. And it's not just extremes. Sometimes it's in the middle of winter, there's a really warm day, just randomly. And everyone goes outside, wow, this is amazing. But it actually makes them sick because it's out of time. It's not time for that kind of a warm day. And so then people start coming into my clinic sick from this sort of warm illness because their system wasn't prepared for it. It's sometimes a problem for people who travel. If they're very sensitive, they'll go to a completely different climate. Like sometimes I'll leave and I'll go back to Costa Rica to visit people where it's warm down there and it's supposed to be cold here, and it makes me sick, or at least I don't feel very good. And so that's kind of an explanation of that. I hope it helps. Intention without intention. Intentless intent, is that just pure presence? It is a quality of pure presence because it's pure presence by itself does not have intent. But the mind and our body still has intent. So you can experience pure presence and you're still having a body. And so the mind can still be there, but it's not trying to do anything. And so you can have this quality of an intent. Oh, this quality, I'm going to pick up my cup. But I don't have to add anything to that. I can be resting in pure presence as pure presence. And my body, mind, my heart is still pumping. I'm still digesting. I can still drink. That's this intentless intent. There's still a quality there, but there's nobody trying to control it. That's one way of thinking about it, at least. I hope that helps. TCM fundamentals for kids. I'm sure there's somebody who's done it. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your practice. I hope you have